So at this point, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Pat.
Yeah, sorry. So Pat Gilbert, I'm Channel Partner Manager at Digital Echidna. We're an agency of about 80 people, Drupal specific, and an Acquia preferred partner for quite a few years now. I've personally been in the Drupal space and a partner with Acquia for almost 10 years at this point. And so happy to be here, happy to share some thoughts from the Digital Echidna perspective.
Thanks, Pat.
And my own, of course.
Hi there, thanks for having me today. I'm John Mack. I run marketing for Bounteous, Acquia's 2019 Partner of the Year. We drive growth for our clients, ensuring the smooth flow of data, insights, and interactions across the digital brand experience. That means we help design and build big picture digital solutions, measure and optimize with connected data, and attract and retain customers through promotion, personalization, and engagement.
Thanks, John.
Hi, everyone. This is Todd Schwarz. I'm coming to you from Accenture Interactive. You can tell I've taken my Corona beard very seriously during this COVID-19 era, but I'm excited to be on the panel and excited to talk to you all today. And we look at Accenture Interactive as probably the largest agency on the planet, but I focus mainly on sort of our build experience side of our business and how we impact and using platforms like Acquia and others to really drive the big E of experiences I refer to.
And Becky. Well, I'll introduce Becky. Here she goes. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself? The fun of Zoom, the fun of live. So Becky will be back with us in a moment.
I'm back, I think. Am I?
You are. Hi, Becky.
Hey, guys. My internet connection got real unstable in the last 5 minutes here, so pre-apology. I'm Becky Parasato. I'm the Director of Business Development for Acquia Media. We are a partner with Acquia, of course, and we're a Drupal-specific agency concentrating on e-commerce exclusively, and I've been part of the Drupal community for about 10 years, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Excellent. Great to have you, Becky. Great to have all of you. First of all, thank you. It's not always easy to be a panel participant when you're giving advice, and so thank you for all of you to being so willing to offer your advice and to participate. So, you know, we're in a new world, we're in a new reality. So I thought I'd start first with, you know, with this whole switch of everyone working from home. So tell me about each of you, tell me about how your organization has adapted to that. So let's start with Becky.
So we actually adapted pretty quickly to working from home. We're a team of about 80 Drupal programmers and managers and such, and we were probably about 40% already distributed. So we were able to go home within 1 day's time. And personally, I love it. I get a lot more done. Interruptions are on my schedule, which I find to be really helpful. And everybody that is in my role typically travels a lot, and now everybody's home. So it's easier to get meetings and connect with people. So I'm enjoying it.
Excellent. Pat, what's your experience been in the experience?
Yeah, similarly, Digital Echidna. So I think I mentioned this earlier to you guys. So I am one of 2 remote workers for Digital Echidna. I'm out in Vancouver. The other one's in Ottawa, Ontario. The rest of the company is in London, Ontario. And so around 80 of them work from the office. So it was a bit of a transition for them, but it went relatively smooth. At first, everyone thought it was going to be kind of short term and weren't really too worried about making sure they had, you know, their second monitors and chairs and whatnot. And then eventually it became a reality, and we ended up having to do home deliveries of office chairs and monitors and that kind of stuff. So shout out to our HR manager who kind of took care of that and made sure everyone was comfortable in working from home in their settings. The other thing that we're seeing and that we have to adapt to is doing more things like our kickoff meetings and our strategy and planning meetings that we typically do on site with clients. We're now having to do that obviously using Zoom, but we're also looking at different tools like Miro, which we can do some whiteboarding and that type of thing, which clients are kind of appreciating because we're not holding up projects anymore.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Todd, what about at Accenture? How are things going from home?
Yeah, for us, if you look at our digital business, we're a workforce of, 20,000 people or more across the planet. And I think for us, this was a little bit of an old normal. We were already used to being a remote workforce, working from, either remote offices or our remote homes. I think the difference for us was actually not having the client-facing time that we were typically used to. Because of this, though, it's been an interesting door opener for us. We've often walked into organizations who, they're not used to this. And so we've been spending time really helping mobilize organizations to say, here, these are the tools. This is how you become. Security is at the forefront of, sort of during this COVID-19 and helping organizations mobilize their workforce to work from home, having us step in to sort of even oftentimes helping them augment some of that work just because they may not have all the different IP connections and security connections and VPNs and so forth. So it's been an interesting transition, and I think it could be a new normal for folks, which is sort of what we're helping people adjust to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think we are moving towards that new normal for folks. John, what about things at Bounteous? How's it going?
Yeah, sure. So I think Bounties has handled it really well with 8 locations across the globe from San Francisco to Toronto. Working across offices and on Zoom is something we were already experts at. So we really just focus on our clients and our employees, doubling down on our values around transparency and communication, and recognizing that this isn't a typical work from home situation. So offering extra options for collaboration, camaraderie, flexibility, both internally and for our clients as well.
Excellent. I think all of our HR organizations, I know at Acquia in particular, they've just done a tremendous job in providing resource and support and giving resource and recommendations. Like one tip, for instance, that we had at Acquia was the time where you normally would have been commuting and commute time, try to use that time to exercise. So I think it's just a nice kind of tip, right? It's pretty basic, but I think it really helps out a lot of people. So I've been somewhat good at that, but not perfect in terms of those. So let's talk a little bit about how we think this whole thing and the virus and so forth and the timing and the impact. What kind of an impact is it having on your overall business? I think we're all impacted, right? Almost every business and industry is impacted in some way. So when you look at your digital businesses and your businesses, how is it impacting you? So let's start with Pat.
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things obviously is how it's impacting our projects, our client projects. And like I alluded to earlier, the initial discovery planning, the stuff that happens on site with the client, trying to figure out how that's going to work out. And like I said, we're kind of finding solutions, but we're also seeing clients who, especially if it's just kicking off a new project, they're really hesitant. They're kind of, is this something that we want to do? Do we want to go down this path? Should we hold off? Should we delay the project? So like I said, we're trying to work with them to find different ways to make sure it's as seamless as possible. The other thing that we're seeing, we do have a lot of healthcare clients. So that's definitely, they're seeing a huge impact. So we're trying to support them as much as possible. I can get into that a lot more, but I think I'll let someone else take over from here.
Okay. Todd, how about the impact on your overall business?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to follow. For us, the overall impact across the board on supply chain has been, incredible. And I think for us, that has really impacted sort of our commerce business and our e-marketplace business, where we are connecting sort of non-traditional back-end suppliers with new front-end providers. You have back-end suppliers who have changed their entire manufacturing lines to go and now produce whatever's required for a COVID-19 sort of situation, to then connect them to traditional service providers like a health provider, for example, that you just normally wouldn't have happened. So we've found that we're spinning up e-marketplaces and e-commerce channels that just wouldn't have been existed 6 months ago, and it's really had an incredible impact sort of on that overall supply chain. and also helped, I think industries have sort of, started to look at how to change their business. A great example is you're starting to see some airlines who, their cargo business is now dramatically increasing with all of the ship to. You're seeing, a typical, yes, grocery stores are open, but what was typically maybe that high margin grocery store product of ready to eat meals, now they're figuring out, all right, how am I augmenting that, and how can I do ship to home, and how can I change what those sort of digital customer specific needs are. And I think all of that is going to have a lasting impact on all of our business. And really, from a digital customer lens, it's it's increasing what we all do every day.
Yeah, and it's amazing how fast it is, right? It's amazing how fast this pivot has been, right? For so many industries, for so many companies. Agreed. Becky, how would you characterize the kind of the impact on your overall business of all this?
So from a client relationship perspective, it's very much the same. We have very few local clients, and so we've always run remotely primarily with our customers. So day-to-day is very typical. What our customers are experiencing, because we are specifically in the e-commerce space, we're seeing both extremes. We're seeing massive demand and them needing to scale and change their environment very quickly. And then we're seeing some businesses that are completely shut down as manufacturers and distributors. And so they're kind of in hibernation mode right now. So they're taking the opportunity to work on some changes digitally. We've also seen a lot of change in the fulfillment process and how we need to support that from an e-commerce perspective. So we're seeing a lot of extremes because we don't concentrate on a vertical in e-commerce. So we're getting a little taste of everything.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. John, what about Bounteous in terms of overall impact?
I think the biggest impacts for us have been around staffing on projects and customers. We've been able to shift work forwards or backwards as needed and really use our flexible and collaborative partnerships to shift gears, whether that's on the messaging that we put out or the promotion that we're doing. We've been able to shift to more real-time reporting, offering training and education opportunities for companies that may have a bit of a downtime. When navigating uncertainty and fear, it's somewhat natural to stop moving and attempt to control everything. So really helping customers that have the knee-jerk reaction to stop building projects or advertising and testing. It's really affecting most of our customers and teams, and helping to navigate through that situation with them is really where our focus is.
Yeah, I think you said an important point there too, which is, it's our natural reaction to stop, right? It's a natural reaction to stop and take a step back and evaluate and see what's going on. Let's relate that to kind of how we all do kind of go-to-market activity, and talk to us about have you had a strategy change in terms of your go-to-market and marketing? And as organizations, are you still doing marketing? I would hope, but are you still doing marketing? How has that changed your strategy? And maybe a little bit about if you expect those changes to be short-term or longer-term. So yeah, let me start with Todd on that one.
Yeah, sure. I think the short answer is, there are going to be long-lasting impacts. I think for our marketing efforts, I mean, we're, we haven't stopped. And in fact, we're out there actively trying to help organizations, in every industry, right? So everything from, power utilities to, to distribution and transportation to, even small to medium businesses. I mean, the amount of uptick in shipping, if you can imagine you're a small, medium business, the only channel out there is your online channel. And so, that means every single thing they need to go and ship. And that just has had this dramatic impact every step of the way. I think for us, we have been very active around, that sort of end-to-end commerce health check, that also end-to-end looking at how are you, what is the customers of yours and how are they interacting with you? If you haven't sort of made some of those key investments to truly understand what your customer's doing in your online channels, cross-channel, you're seriously looking at it now, because that is your channel. And I think that is going to set some long-lasting impacts on our business, your business, and all of our customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. John, what about you in terms of your marketing strategy and tactics? Any changes?
Sure. We've definitely had to change a little bit. So we tend to go to a lot of events. We know that those aren't necessarily happening. So we've started to double down on the digital content. We routinely put out blog posts and webinars, and we're just ramping that up a little bit. I think it's about having empathy, making sure we're having that right message at the right time. It's about flexibility. For us, as well as our clients, I think everyone's quickly learning how long it takes to change your campaign messaging. Add personalization and messaging to your website, or really pivot in how you're going to market. So that's been a really interesting time for everyone to sort of take a reflection on how our processes work. And we've also focused on sort of extending those relevant services to our clients and letting them know we can help with your organic listings, your paid campaigns, things that might have been outside the scope initially are now, we can bring them up and say, these are ways that we can help during this particular time. So definitely a lot of changes and things that will stick around.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of nice outcomes of this when it comes to marketing, which is, I think potentially all of us are turning the aggressive tone down a little bit, right? And I think that's the right time for that, I see. And then also just making sure that you still have that presence and that message is there, but you're making sure that you're communicating value now, which all of us as marketers, I think, need to, do a better job of that. Becky, what about you in terms of your Acquia Media's like go-to-market and marketing type of activity? Any changes?
So much like John, we are event heavy this time of year typically. So that exercise is on pause. We're spending a lot of effort producing content and resources for Drupal users in general right now. Things like scalability and performance. These have become topics that we're getting hammered with from other Drupal users, customers, clients, other developers even. So we're trying to support by producing content that is a little bit more functional, I would maybe describe it as. For our own messaging going out, it's relatively similar to what it was, just authentic to our brand and the type of customer that we want to speak to and work with. We're working really hard to be cautious of, I think we've all seen some distasteful marketing come out of this situation, and our leadership is very, very, very aware of that. And we want to make sure that we're just staying true to who we are and being authentic, and that community spirit of continuing to try to help, especially right now. So I would say biggest change, no events, pivot. Everybody is writing blog posts now, myself included, to try to say, hey, here's what we do best. Is this helpful for you right now? Have it. And then with that event money, we're trying to support the Drupal Association right now. That's what our leadership really wants to encourage everybody to do, is think of how you can put that money back into the community and make sure that we are around in 2021.
I love that. Acquia is also doing the same kind of thing. So our sponsorship dollars that we would have poured towards Drupal Con, we're asking the Drupal Association to keep have that donation. So yes, so I'm sure there are a lot of organizations, all of us as Drupal organizations, with that same thought in mind. So thank you.
I think so.
Yeah. Echidna is doing the same thing, and I think we're all missing Drupal Con. I think everyone's starting to feel that a little bit right now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to become a virtual event. So the DA is working on that right now. So we'll see. As we're all kind of learning and figuring out what virtual events look like, and the length and the time and the tone and entertainment value and all of that included. So right. I know that they're working on that right now. Let's make the move from that. We talked a little bit about content, which I think is interesting. So, everyone is content binging, right? Whether that be Netflix series and movies. And so a lot of people right now, I think, are searching, the ones that aren't in purchasing mode or in researching mode or in content, exploring new projects. Are you seeing that? Are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing the content binging going on, and how does that impact kind of what you're providing? Do you think you'll make a move to more content? And is it, so let's start there. What do you think, Pat?
I mean, traditionally, we're not an agency that, writes content for our clients. We do it for the odd one, or we offer guidance and obviously content strategy, but in terms of actual writing, it's not usually something that we offer. However, we are trying to support our clients in any way we can. And like I said, especially, in healthcare right now, where some of those clients, they're obviously our clients are communications officers and managers. And so their number one job is to get information out, you know, to the frontline workers, to healthcare workers, to nurses, to staff, all that kind of stuff. So any way we can support there, it kind of wraps into the marketing question, but also our personal content. Absolutely, you know, tons of blogs, a lot of it going out. We're not stopping from like this is who we are, this is how we can help, but we've always, you know, to John's point, we've always taken that empathetic approach in saying, how can we help? And now a lot of our blog content is really, this is how we're going to help you, like just by producing this information, right? It's less about, here's a tidbit of information and let's see how we can work together. Instead, this is how we're doing things. You can use these same methods in your processes, and this is how we're contributing back. And that's the types of content that we're seeing put out around this. And absolutely, you know, every second article has something to do with COVID-19 at this point.
I know. It feels that way, doesn't it? In terms of that.
So we're just really trying to, with the content, we're trying to provide as much value to everybody, whether it's a potential customer prospect or whether it's another agency that's looking to figure it out. You know, we've seen other agencies already folding up because of this pandemic, and we don't want to see that happen. You know, we want to see the Drupal community thrive. So if we can help out other agencies as well, we're more than happy to.
I love that. Well, that's what community is all about, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of, Todd, I'm going to start with you on this one. What kind of advice would you give to, you know, to brands about, you know, what should tone be? How loud should they be? Not loud? Like, just in general, what kind of advice would you give to any brands that want to maintain their brand integrity, or how do they do that? How do they stay relevant today?
Yeah, great question, and I think a really important topic. And I relate with some of the earlier comments and people said around, you know, being empathetic and being transparent and being real. I think, you know, there's, at least in my lifetime, I can't reflect on a time where anyone I talk to and anywhere I talk on the globe, we're in the same thing, same situation, same impact like we are today. And I think if you carry that forward, if you want to resonate with your customers, you sort of got to relate to them on the ground that we're living in today. And I think part of that is to be transparent and empathetic. You asked a second ago around content, and like the amount of content being required to be created is as high as ever, right? You as a brand or a service provider, you need to go and create more content than you ever have, because your typical potential outlet stores or retail stores or service departments are not open, and they're not open in a traditional way. So now brands have to go and truly be you know, very pragmatic around how they get the information and the content to their customers and their services. They need to be thoughtful in how they communicate it. They need to go to the channel that their customers are typically going to, which may be new ways of interacting with them today. You know, they need to find, where are those eyeballs headed, and then how do I get that right message at the right time, you know, that intersects with them. And I think that's just put a huge emphasis today. And there's no way that you can, like, I don't know if you guys have been following, but it brings a tear to my eye every time I watch that Uber commercial, and where, you know, they basically just talk about, you know, don't drive Uber, stay home. And regardless of however you feel about that brand, like, I have, you know, it just creates, like, I'm like, wow, that is such a powerful advertisement for me. And I think it was just so well done. And I guess that's just, to me, an example of an ad that I've seen a lot that really drove home a real empathetic and personal message. And I think that's, you know, if I'm a service provider or you know, consumer packaged goods or any one of those industries, and I need to talk to my customer, like, I'm doubling down on how to do that, and I'm doing it in a way that relates to them as most intimate as I can.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. John, any advice, any kind of additional advice that you'd add on to Todd's comments around brands, or advice that you'd give them, how to stay relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all the points about creating the right content, or sometimes it's even resurfacing content that's already been created that's just extremely applicable right now. I think it's also important to point out that advertising still exists, right? And many brands have frozen their budgets, so it's actually costs are even down right now. So it's a good time to build an association with customers that will last long after this is over. It doesn't need to be focused all on new customer acquisition either, or new pivots. There are ways to remind your existing customers about your unique benefits, build those relationships, and really invest in those so that they can carry on for the long term. And it's a time to really repeat why people fell in love with your company in the first place. So there's a lot of opportunity right now for organizations to build their brands.
And do you think, John, is it the time to focus on your existing customers? Is it the time to focus on prospects, or should you think there should be a blend?
It's got to be a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
There's, I think we're seeing people being a little less aggressive on the new customer acquisition. I think that's even just in the messaging, can be more focused on value and can be more focused on the really tangible benefits. But we can't forsake the brand at this time.
Good points.
I think just to chime in real quick, I think it's just make sure you're doing it right. Like Todd mentioned Uber, and I think that's a case of them doing it right. And Becky mentioned some that are iffy out there, and I got one that was from an automated email from a travel agency that was, their headline was where we can make you, or where we can get you during COVID-19. Like, how can we help you travel to get away from COVID-19? And I was like, that's a horrible, horrible approach. Just not empathetic, just really trying to get those sales in, and just, yeah, it's a really quick way to hurt your brand.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The one thing that I'm always kind of hearing, and as I sit on these CMO panels, is to say to people, you really need to evaluate kind of what your brand is known for and what your core values of your brand are, spoken as a true marketer, right? And, make sure that you're incorporating, you continue to incorporate those core values in your message. I think that's super, super important. Becky, you have all kinds of experience around e-commerce, and this is the time of e-commerce, right?
Mm-hmm.
With retail stores closing. And what's your advice for people who maybe need to get started around e-commerce? Like, how do you even think about that? What kind of advice? I'm sure you say this all the time. What kind of advice would you give? And
my advice right now is very different than my typical advice. So my advice right now is consider what your minimum viable product, or MVP, of e-commerce could look like if you're really suffering as a brand and you need that channel. An example is that Craigslist is actually one of the first instances of e-commerce that we've ever seen. So think simple, maybe even think manual. Think of adding a Facebook buy button if you're in that desperate of a situation. My advice is a lot less about planning, which is completely against my religion to say that, but it's more about let's react quickly, get some revenue going, and then what's our 3-month plan, our 6-month plan, what does it look like in a year from now? Try to take this opportunity to evolve your business. For established e-commerce brands, I would say if you didn't get smoked by traffic and have some instability within your website, count your lucky stars and develop a playbook for scalability, high traffic volumes. What does it look like when suddenly this is your only channel? And consider the fact that that's not a super cheap or quick exercise, and it's essential to ensure that you're able to still sell. So don't discount things like load testing and a proper scalable hosting environment and server monitoring. These are all things that people deem boring. They are the backbone to being successful, staying up, avoiding that negative social media chatter about my business or your business has gone down. I tried to place an order, but these are all ways to prevent that. So very different pieces of advice if you don't have a channel versus if you do. And kind of everything in between.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else want to offer any experience tips around e-commerce?
Less experience, and well, I guess personal experience from what I've seen in the last couple of weeks. I'm a big beer guy. I love craft beer. I go to different breweries all over town, and And a lot of them are very stubborn in their ways. They want people in the brewery. They want that social connection. You know, it's all about come to me. They don't even sell at local liquor stores and that kind of thing. However, when you have no choice, that pivot to e-commerce was quick and something awesome to see. So, you know, it's spin up a quick Shopify site or something like that, put 4 products online, doesn't have to be fancy. You know, to Becky's point, it's MVP. It allows you to obviously continue to create revenue, but then it also offered another avenue for some of their employees. Like it's, instead of having your bartender bartending, you now have that bartender driving as a delivery driver, right? So the breweries are actually paying their people to deliver, and there's a cost to me who's getting them to deliver it. But at the same time, you're generating revenue and you're keeping people employed. It might take away from that kind of stubborn mentality and get their product out, you know, a lot quicker. And I hope that stays that way in the future as well. And it'll just help them grow their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I would just add similar to what Pat and Becky said. I think time to market is of the essence. It's critical right now. And I think if you are a brand or a service provider and you do not have an e-commerce channel, now's the time. And I think, you know, I would never want to forego planning, and you don't want to, you know, be negligent on how you look at that. But any way you can get and stand up storefronts, you know, in 3 to 4 weeks even is critical. And I would argue that, you know, in today's world, it's as important as ever to make sure that you're creating secure, private, controlled transactions that customers can trust. But at the same time, you need to go and get your brand out there in a way that you can transact online. You know, and that doesn't mean, you know, just transacting in the traditional sense of buying something via, you know, cash transaction. It's anything. It's the way that you transaction B2B. It could be the way that you are, you know, transacting e-signatures. This is a disruption that's impacting every industry on the planet. And I don't think it's just about retail. I think it's about, you know, every industry, whether you're out there looking at, you know, I don't know, new healthcare plans to looking at, you know, buying new homes. I mean, it's impacted everything. At least from my lens, there's no one who's safe from this.
Yeah, agreed. You know, one of the things that that I love is by seeing some of these, you know, brands pivoting, right? Like an example, but is, you know, Lululemon doesn't have the retail storefront right now, but switched everything online, and now they're showing how they can add value online as well. So they're doing, you know, yoga classes online, right? I love that. It's an example of a brand that's, you know, understanding kind of what's going on, and the presence that they're making digitally could still match their storefront presence later on. So one of the things I always say is think longer term to make sure your digital, you know, your digital storefront presence matches that physical presence later on. Another thing I see is in terms of pivoting is even local restaurants that are now all, you know, switched to takeout. One of my local ones that I visit a lot, they just sent out recipes from their dishes. And so I'm like, wow, I love that. Now, I don't know if I'm going to make it or not, but I like that. And I'm going to remember that. And then when they do open back up, hopefully eventually or some point, I'm going to remember that, and it's going to stick with me. So it's a nice kind of value add. And I think we're seeing all kinds of brands be able to kind of pivot, you know, around those types of, value adds, if you will. So
Lynne, if you take that even further, I've seen same thing, right? Restaurants. But what's amazing is that they're still able to order the supplies they had. So they're able to get those ingredients. And so I found that they're not only giving you recipes, but you can go and buy bulk pasta and bulk sauce and bulk bread and things like that, you know, you may go to the store and it may be sort of limited quantities, but these restaurants are still getting it. Their supply chain's been established. So it's really interesting to see how they've pivoted from, well, I can already get all this stuff, so now I'm gonna hand out the recipes and sell you all the products with it, so you can make that at home. I think that was a really neat, a neat pivot for them.
I do too. I think another great example is I know this company well just because they're a long-term Acquia customers, King Arthur Flour here locally. And so guess what we're all doing while we're home? Well, apparently baking, right? So baking. And so what their kind of value add is I mean, they're great on their site. They're perfect. Have tons of new traffic, tons of new business. They're all set, but they are providing value add by doing recipes and providing a hotline, chat, online. So if you're in a baking crisis and you're in the kitchen, you can go to them and they can help you out of that. So again, just another example of a nice, I think a nice like value add. So let me ask the question that I get a lot, and I already saw it come in one of the chat questions, which is it okay as a marketer if I do promotions and campaigns? Is that still okay to do right now? I'm going to ask all of you. So John, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned advertising earlier. I think it's important to get the message right. It's important to be empathetic and to be real. I think people can look right through any sort of attempt to capitalize on this particular time, but it's very important to be out there, and it's important to have that same message across your different channels. I don't think people need to go crazy and jump into a brand new marketing channel they've never tried before and expect that to be the big game changer. I think it's making sure your message is consistent across channels, and really, if you're bringing people back to your website, making sure that your website is matching the message that you showed them, whether that's email, advertising, any social media, any of those channels. Tying it all together, being consistent, and really providing value it's the perfect time to be running promotions at this time.
Yep. Pat, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I said, it's just about doing it right. Don't be the travel agency that's trying to promote, a package to a place you can't travel to. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Be smart about your messaging. Again, that word's been kind of used quite a few times, but be empathetic, show compassion. But I don't think that we as marketers and as sales folks need to reduce our efforts, because we still have to survive as businesses as well, right? We need our products out there as well. And well, for us, our products are our people. We need to keep our people employed. So I don't think there's any shame in making sure that we're marketing who we are and what we do and how we can help.
Awesome. Becky, any other comments on that?
I think as long as it's within integrity, go for it. I'll go back to the Drupal Association. I really like how they've handled this whole thing. They've been extremely transparent. They came to the community. They said what they needed, and I think that is a really excellent example of a brand sticking to their core values.
I agree. I'm sure they would love to hear that. So we'll have to send them this recording the folks during this difficult time. Are there any other general kind of points of advice that you would give or that you'd want to give when thinking about kind of what's going on right now, advice around people's business or marketing or product wise? Are there any other general points of advice that you would want to give? Todd?
Yeah. I mean, a couple things for me that, are paramount in today's. And so if organizations, so first of all, you absolutely need to keep campaigning and product promotions. You need to maintain that normalcy. I mean, we need it from an economy perspective, and honestly, our lives haven't stopped, right? Yes, we've had a change, but nothing should impact that. I think what that dovetails into, though, is it dovetails into opportunities for companies out there to look at, how are they really viewing their unified profile and their unified view of a customer? Are they building those? Are they looking at their customer data in a lens of understanding all the ways that they transact with them, and then how to really activate that in a new digital way? And I think this is more important than ever, right? I mean, when we sort of got this thrown upon us in March, and seeing the sort of ripple effect it's had across our industries, it just probably made a lot of companies like ours to step back and say, all right, what do we know about who's interacting with us, who's transacting, how we're communicating to them? What do we know about the ways that we're responding, and how are we increasing that brand loyalty? And it goes to show that if you have made, even some baby steps into building, your customer data platform, you're probably seeing dividends from that already, and you're probably seeing benefits. And if you aren't, there's no better time than right now to go look at that. And I think that's paramount. And I would argue that's one of the biggest digital trends we have, in the market right now.
And now is the time, I think, for a lot of people to research and to do research, because some people have like the timer on that in our reading mode. John?
Yeah, just piggyback off of that. And in addition to CDPs and having that data available about your customers, I'll point out something similar with personalization. Right, the companies that have already started with personalization or taken those baby steps were more quickly able to respond. As many companies have some sort of tool installed, but maybe don't have the skill set internally. I think there should be two efforts as we go forward. There's, like we talked about with getting something up and running right away, the MVP. What can we do right away to react? But there should also be this underlying effort that we're going to come out of this stronger. We're going to have solid data collection in place. And we're going to be able to pivot when this is all over. We know it's not going to be exactly the same as it was pre-COVID. So we're building these processes. We're teaching our people to use the tools that we've already invested in or are starting to invest in. And we're going to come at this with new capabilities and great processes.
Cool.
If I can jump on that, I think my advice would be use the tools that you have, leverage the tools that you have or that you've invested in, whether that's just your website, whether it's, Lift for personalization and actually, how are we envisioning how it's going to be a more personalized experience for people during this time. For us personally, we have an intranet solution, kind of our own kind of distro that we've built. And again, going back to those healthcare clients, a lot of that, we're seeing a huge uptick in usage of it because it's now become the primary source of communication between all employees. Like I said, all nurses, all staff, understanding, how do they have N95 masks and do they have all this kind of information? So it's leveraging that tool that they've purchased and they've sort of used as a little bit of a social connection between employees, but now they're using it as a mainstream communication tool that they rely on. Absolutely. Right. So it's making sure that you're leveraging the tools that you have and that you've invested in already, I think is a good piece of advice.
Okay.
Figure out ways to use them.
I'm gonna ask a question that came in through the chat, and this is from Robert. And Robert, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna summarize your question. He has a privately held advisory investment bank and consulting firm. In this environment, I'm trying to see what channels I could work. Do you have any suggestions around what types of channels? He discusses LinkedIn a little bit, but how about what channels to activate potentially new clients in this market?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think LinkedIn is a great one. I think we talked, I think, on the last session about activating your network. It's a better time to make an introduction to someone you've already chatted with or someone that you're connected to than to look for some brand new people coming to your website or things like that. I would say that there needs to be the really easy way to capture someone's interest and be able to follow up quickly with an email or some sort of follow-up. So making sure that you have your site set up in a way that is easy to capture. Hey, I'm interested. I wanted to learn more, or I want to get a newsletter, or I want to just be in contact. Without sort of waiting for that long-term cycle of people coming back every couple months to check you out. So LinkedIn's a great one. Wherever you are currently and where your connections are, that's a great place to be posting. Twitter might not be the most relevant at this time, but I think we've seen a lot of more action on those networks as well. So, and then back to advertising, I think it's a great time to do advertising. If you can tie that to people that have already been on your website, that's just another way to really focus your spend.
Good advice. Anyone else? Anyone else have other advice, other channels? I think as marketers, we always like to say, pick the channel where your customers are, where your prospects are, right? Whether that be Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever they are, you got to reach them in their medium and the medium that they're using and looking at. And so I think it's, figuring that out from your potential, prospect list is really important to try to figure out where they are and what kind of communication. Okay, let me see if if you have other questions you want to send in through the chat, please do that. And the other thing I should say, which I didn't say in the beginning, is all of our panelists are happy to make connections with each of you. So through the survey at the end, you'll have an opportunity to, if there's one person on the panel or more than one person that you want to connect with, you'll have a chance to put that in the survey and we will make that connection happen. But you could also privately chat them as well. And we'll make sure that that connection happens a little bit later on. So let's talk a little bit about, let's go out on a limb a little bit, okay? So we talked before about a little bit about what brands can do and what they should and shouldn't do, not be so obnoxious, but be okay, but be present and be relevant. So, and I think we've sprinkled this a little bit throughout, but how about anyone want to offer up an example of a brand, and we're all friends here, okay? We're all amongst friends. Anyone want to bring up, and you don't have to say the exact name if you don't like it, but an example of one that you think was too loud or too obnoxious, or one that you think actually really got it well. I know, Pat, you mentioned one that you thought was a little bit obnoxious.
Yeah, and again, I'm not going to name the agency, but yeah, it was a travel agency, right. And I think that was obnoxious. And then, like, we all talked about Uber and how that was just great. It hit home perfect. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll jump in. I think we've seen some really great examples. We have a few quick serve restaurant clients that have reacted really quickly. It's a testament to the systems we've put in place and the tools that they're using, but also just to their own internal ability to pivot and change. So shifting messaging and getting it out quickly, whether that's shifting to contact-free delivery. We've actually seen a lot of companies using this for massive hiring campaigns. And I think it's just really responding and saying, we hear you, we know that we need something different, and we have it, and we're rolling it out quickly. So the ability to move quickly is essential.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd add, I don't know if I have any great examples of people who, were egregious or sort of, didn't communicate in the right way or advertise in the right way, but I think there's lots of examples of people who are missing opportunities. They're not taking advantage of this disruption, to transact, to communicate, to advertise, to build that extra loyalty. Like, I loved your example around Lululemon. I mean, there's no way to create that that vibrancy around your brand and that loyalty than just continuing to sort of offer some online services that then you can say, all right, after you do the workout, oh, by the way, did you know what your instructor was wearing? And here's how you can get 20% off, or whatever it may be. I think there's there's a real, in every massive times of disruption, there's always an opportunity. And I don't care if you're in construction to insurance to whatever, you need to be sort of breaking down those boundaries to go and explore new ways, new channels, and new ways of communicating and transacting. And I would argue, if you're not doing that, you may not be doing anything egregious, but you're just missing an opportunity in my book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
I was going to say, in line with what Lululemon's doing, Equinox is obviously a big gym brand. And as soon as they had to close down all their gyms, I think within a week they had launched a whole new platform for online training sessions. So they have some of their top trainers training people, video, this is all the exercises and everything you can do from home. So I believe you have to pay for it. But again, it's kind of capitalizing on an opportunity, but also making sure that you're continuing to connect and provide the value that you bring. And that's what they're known for is a lot of their personal fitness, personal instructors, and that kind of stuff. It's not just about being a gym with them, right? So,
right.
So I think they're doing a good job there.
Yeah.
And again, still trying to generate some revenue and keep their employees busy.
That's right. Becky?
I like what Snack Nation did. They're not one of my clients and I'm not a subscriber, but I follow their brand. I like their messaging. I like their leadership. And so they just made a very small pivot. They typically send subscription snacks to people's offices. Now they're sending them to homes. So it was a tasteful small pivot. And they're saying, hey, we're also going to donate meals to charity for when you purchase from us. Their messaging is really consistent about health and wellness. It's not vulture-y. So I think that they've done a really elegant job with a very tiny degree of movement.
Excellent. Good example. One last topic that I want to bring up, because I feel like we're all facing this, especially as those of us in marketing. So we're also used to going to in-person events, right? Shows. We have our Acquia Engage user conference. There's all kinds of in-person shows and events that we're all kind of having withdrawal from. And so I'd like to kind of offer it up to see if anyone has advice in terms of making that pivot. Are you guys making a pivot from in-person events to virtual events? How are you doing that? What are you thinking about? So let me start with John.
Sure. I think we have a great story here. Bounteous leads nationwide trainings around the Google marketing platform. And we're often in 2 different cities a month. So we had a really quick turnaround to cancel 6 of our in-person trainings and convert them to digital immediately. I think the big thing that people need to remember as we're thinking about attending a conference or hosting a training or hosting even a pitch online is it's not just what we would typically do in the room, but now on a Zoom. We have to make sure that we're taking advantage of the digital space. So for us, that meant, having 2 trainers in the room, which may have been cost prohibitive in an in-person environment, but now is possible. So being able to bring in experts and bring in visuals that might be difficult on a conference room floor, but is actually really possible on digital. We don't want to see the same exact things that we've had for 10 years, webinars that you can't interact with, that you can't do Q&A with. It's time to make sure that we're taking advantage of the medium that we're using and all of these new capabilities. And we're saying we're not just the same old, but now online. We're actually really diving in and using the feature sets that we have available to us.
Excellent. Anyone else want to comment on?
Yeah, I would just say, the tolerance we've now all have for, just sort of the balance in life and, little mini disruptions, your dog barking or your 9-year-old or whatever, opening the door. I think those are all okay. And I love that, I would argue that we need to continue these events. We need to continue to have our gatherings. We need to talk about, what's happening in the industry. And I would encourage any of my partners, including you, Lynn, to don't back down. Keep having those, and don't be afraid to do them live, because I think everyone's perspective and tolerance is so much greater. And I think it's a real missed opportunity if we just put all of that on hold. I'm looking forward to when we can get back in person, because I think there's a lot of meaningful ways to interact with someone one-to-one. But I'm certainly the last person to tell you that we should just put everything on hold until this ends. I think we need it. We need to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I agree. Pat, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just I'm a very social person, and those, I travel a lot. Being remote, I'm not in the office. I don't get that interaction. I'm always doing this, right? So I'm pretty used to this, but I do miss that, going to Drupal Cons, going to Engage, being, participating in these events, shaking hands, going for drinks with partners, colleagues, frenemies, as we call them, other agencies that we work with or work against. I definitely miss that. But that being said, to Todd's point, and something I said earlier, I think is I really like that people are being more human and doing this kind of interaction. And it's like, yes, I do work from home. It's more of a reality now. People are more accepting of that kind of stuff. And yeah, if I'm not wearing a dress shirt and I'm wearing a t-shirt, that's okay. I'm still the same person, If my dog barks, I'm still the same person. It might distract me for a second, but it's just life, and we're all human, and I kind of enjoy that, and I hope that people continue in that direction.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's much more personal. Becky, do you agree? Do you think this whole environment for us has made us all, I think, much more on the personal communication front? And
absolutely. There's clients that I've worked with remotely for years that I've actually never seen on video even. And so this is forcing them onto video and off of the phone. And also I think probably common for all of our roles, a lot of travel, and with travel comes scheduling pressure and trying to balance that home work life. It is balanced now. It's all just one big thing, and I really like it. It's a sense of personal relief to have less pressure on myself professionally, even if it's just for a couple months pause, and hopefully take some of those lessons into my future work life when I'm back on the road nearly full time. And just trying to find that inner balance is something I've never been good at, and it's been forced on me now. And pretty awesome.
That's great. That's awesome. I think that's a perfect note to end on, actually. So just to remind everyone that we're going to be sending the recorded version of this out to you. Please do the survey that we'll send you in just a few minutes. And if you want to get connected with any of the folks on the panel or all the folks on the panel, please fill that in your survey as well. My thanks to all of you great panelists. Thank you so much for all of your advice and your support, and appreciate you joining today. So, and hopefully we can do it again another time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having
guys.
us.
This was fun. It was awesome.
Excellent. Thanks everyone. Take care.